Hey Cucumbers, this is going to be a pretty quick introduction to the Prusa Mini Plus and my first impressions with everything. Basically what I thought about the assembly process, my experience with the software, and my thoughts on the print quality. The reason I got a 3D printer in the first place is because there are quite a few projects I'd like to do that involve 3D printed parts. In the past I've used 3D printing services as an alternative, but since I imagine this is something I'll be able to use quite a bit, it seems like a good investment. The cost of 3D printing services for the projects I have in mind also adds up to the point where it just makes sense to buy one myself. It also makes sense for faster turnaround times with testing new designs for projects. The reason I chose the Prusa Mini Plus specifically was because I wanted a fairly cheap 3D printer that would just work right out of the box with only minor adjustment. From all the reviews I've seen, Prusa machines are extremely reliable and friendly to new users. Most of the parts that I plan on printing aren't very large, so the build volume of the Mini was fine for my requirements. And from my initial experience, I have to say I'm extremely happy with my choice. The setup of the kit was fairly straightforward. It's not quite at Lego level, but I managed to put everything together in about 3 or 4 hours, and then spent maybe 30 minutes to an hour calibrating the machine. It did take longer than I was expecting, but that's also partly my fault since I have zero 3D printing experience and was double checking everything since some of the images in the instruction manual were pretty small and not always the clearest. Even so, I ended up having to go back and redo a section. Getting the wiring into the electronics box was also quite fiddly and took a while. I don't think I have massive hands, but it was tricky even for me. Then I had an issue mounting the control panel. For some reason the screw that the instructions said to use to mount the panel wouldn't screw in far enough to hold it in place. So I ended up using a shorter spare screw that seemed to work. Once the build was done, it took me a little bit of time to figure out how to dial in the Z offset for the calibration. Then I printed the Prusa whistle that was included on the USB drive for my first print, and it worked perfectly. The flexible and magnetic PEI plate also works really well. I've never had any issues with prints sticking to the plate during the printing process, or with removing them once the print is done. The first print that I sliced myself also worked great, but it was fairly simple as a flat shape and didn't require any supports. One thing that I learned once I tried some objects that needed supports is that the pre-configured settings in Prusa Slicer need adjustment, otherwise you end up with supports that are impossible to remove. I'll link the source I found for better settings. I know this video is fairly short, but I wanted to get something out to share this awesome new piece of equipment, and I've been pretty busy the last 2 weeks. I'll probably end up making some more videos specifically about the 3D printer once I have a bit more time, so if there's anything specific you'd like to see, just leave a comment. As always, if you enjoyed the content, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks.